Welcome to Eye on America. I'm Michelle Miller. Today we celebrate some of America's favorite pastimes that are keeping up with the present. In Maryland, we see how new rules are setting up baseball for a home run. And in Texas, we tour the legendary Stetson hat factory as Western wear rises in popularity. But first, we set sail on the Atlantic, all in the name of science. Ben Tracy has a story of a 36,000-mile competition designed to protect our waters. He brings us aboard a high-tech sailboat collecting data from some of the most remote parts of the ocean.
We're going to hit speeds of up to 30 miles an hour.
A ride on this 60-foot racing sailboat feels more like a rocket ship on the water.
That allow it to, whoa, go like this. We get to achieve these crazy speeds.
Oh, we're going fast now.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie Enright is the skipper of the 11th Hour racing team, one of 5 boats in a grueling 6-month, 36,000-mile race around the world.
You have to be more than just a sailor. I think that part's appealing to me.
You're a sailor, but also like a survivalist.
It's not like we have an issue out there we can just call AAA.
Alone in the middle of the ocean, they've had to fix everything from torn sails to busted rudders, while also being citizen scientists.
1 degree south.
Their boats are equipped with high-tech tools to gather data on the health of the waters they pass through in some of the most remote places on Earth.
They are actually going to the Southern Ocean, and this is a really important area where we're lacking a lot of scientific data.
Lucy Hunt is a science advisor for the ocean race.
And this is their ocean pack.
She says the boats take temperature, oxygen, and carbon dioxide readings. Scientists around the world use this information to study how the oceans are responding to climate change, as they absorb 90% of the excess heat created by planet-warming fossil fuel emissions. They've also detected microplastics in nearly every sample taken on the race.
We are looking at the second of 2 NOAA drifter buoys.
In the Southern Ocean, 11th Hour Racing deployed 2 U.S. government buoys that will help improve weather forecasting and even track hurricanes.
Stand by, guys.
Charlie Enright wants to win the race, but also protect the vast blue seas that make up 70% of the planet we call home.
That's the important part, trying to find answers to these complicated problems.
Turning now from the high seas to the open road. Self-driving cars may still sound a bit like science fiction, but they're already a reality in a handful of U.S. cities. Chris Van Cleve goes for a ride in a driverless taxi for a look at the safety behind the technology.
Robert Stone and Sheila Zagloski are trying out Waymo's ride-hailing service that just expanded to include their Tempe, Arizona retirement community. Their car arrives without a person in the driver's seat.
We love it. It's going to replace a car for us sooner than later.
In 2018, CBS Mornings cameras were the first allowed to ride in a fully autonomous Waymo. Then, the service was limited to a select few early adopters, and each gas-powered minivan arrived with a human safety driver on board.
Waymo does intend to completely remove the safety driver eventually, so there'll be no one up front at all.
After more than 1 million driverless miles and no reported injuries, Waymo is seen as the industry leader, having expanded its footprint in Phoenix, adding service in San Francisco, and soon to parts of Los Angeles. Those minivans have been replaced with a fleet of all-electric Jaguars.
The Waymo driver never gets drowsy. It doesn't get distracted. It is something that is attentive all the time.
Adam Lenz is Waymo's head of sustainability.
Would you say the cars perform as well or better than a human driver?
I would say that I really trust this technology, and that when you're in the car, you feel entirely safe, and it's a great user experience.
But the technology is still learning.
I think there's opportunities to continue to build a better service for our riders, and we continue to do that.
68% of drivers told AAA they were afraid of autonomous vehicles, though truly self-driving cars are operating in only a handful of cities across the country.
It's really impressive what Waymo is doing.
Journalist Tim Stevens covers the auto industry.
If you compare that to any other ride-sharing company like an Uber or a Lyft that are serving basically coast-to-coast at this point, it's really a tiny impression.
Waymo is owned by Google's parent company, Alphabet.
Waymo has been given a lot of runway this far and a lot of R&D dollars to develop this, truly incredible technology. But it is still a long way away from being a truly viable, independent, profitable business. And so the question on the minds of a lot of people is, how much more patience does Alphabet have for this business?
Here in San Francisco, the city council denied Waymo a permit to add a parking garage after concerns from the community and labor unions that autonomous vehicles could cost jobs. Using the Waymo app, we tried it for ourselves, taking a ride around Phoenix for about the same cost as calling an Uber. You pretty quickly, sitting back here, forget there's no one actually driving the vehicle, other than there's no driver making awkward small talk while we're going from point A to point B. There are a few little things that are different. It can be a little hesitant, and it's taken a couple of turns, maybe not the way a human driver would, but nothing that was unsafe.
What we've seen is that people experiencing the technology really leads to people using it more and having trust in the technology to get them safely to where they need to go.
Two people who don't need to be convinced, Sheila and Robert.
I'm 83 years old and I'm thinking about retiring from driving. And this is just a great way to go. I can get rid of my car and depend on it.
You don't have any kind of mixed feelings about the fact there's no one driving the car?
That's the exciting part. It's fun and it's safe and you don't have to tip.
Riding into a tipless and driverless future.
Coming up, America's national pastime, playing by new rules. This is Eye on America. Batter up! Baseball is beloved for its tradition, but that does not mean it's immune to change. Tony DeCopel checks out a few of these new rules at the home of the Baltimore Orioles, where he also took a trip down memory lane and a few swings from the batter's box.
He's going to try to come in, one of those heaters.
The older I get, the more my family has to hear about it.
2-1 fastball. One of the prettiest swings, I think, in history of college baseball, to be honest with you.
The time I homered for George Washington University against nationally ranked Tulane, for example. Or the swing that beat the University of Maryland in the bottom of the ninth. But of all my tired old glory stories, replays of which exist only in my memories, the one I tell the most is me as a high school senior, on the field for an all-state game at Oriole Park at Camden Yards, where I took a low fastball into the left field seats. DeCopel's big swing ran the headline in the Baltimore Sun.
See where it says 376? It was right around there.
But as I recently saw for myself, the new left field seats at Camden Yards are way deeper. And this simulation from my so-called friends in the Orioles front office shows how my big swing from high school would now be just another fly ball.
There were seats that we just basically truncated and pushed back.
Orioles general manager Mike Elias doesn't seem to care what he's done to me.
And you basically took that away from me now in retrospect.
If you can bounce one off the wall here, I think that's pretty good for a high school kid now.
But it turns out the old Oriole Park, which felt so big to me, was actually among the most home run friendly in Major League Baseball. For Elias, the change came down to the analytics.
It was our judgment that having a very small ballpark where the ball tended to fly was a disadvantage for the organization.
And I imagine also if you call up a free agent with these dimensions who's a pitcher, they answer the phone more readily.
That's probably the biggest part of it. This was always a really tough sell to bring free agent pitching into Baltimore.
Not anymore. The 2023 Orioles have one of the best records in baseball after signing some of the best pitchers in the game. And to their credit, they were also kind enough to invite little old me back for a new attempt at a home run.
What do you think my chances are of putting one out of this park 25 years after I did it as a high schooler?
Absolute zero.
Tell me what you really think.
If you do hit a home run here, we will sign you to a professional contract.
You hear that? You hear that? We have witnesses.
Orioles catcher Adley Rutschman was more encouraging.
I'm excited to see what you got. Any tips for me as a hitter?
Try and go in that corner right there where it says 376.
So aim for the 376.
Yeah, try and go right there.
Why not aim for the 333? That seems even better.
You could try that. That's pinpoint.
All right, here we go.
And so, with my family looking on, I stepped into the box during Orioles batting practice. But wait, let's hold that thought for a moment and talk about change. Because you might think baseball never changes, that it's America's great constant. But in fact, the game is always changing. The height of the mound, the makeup of the ball, the rules for the bat even. And as of this year, the size of the bases and the time allowed between pitches. So you wonder, did I do it again? I'm now a 42-year-old guy with 4 kids and a mostly desk job. Of course I didn't.
One more.
Baseball changes, you remember, and so does ability.
Couldn't even reach the child out there.
And whatever I had is now thoroughly tapped.
You got pretty close to the wall.
A little bit? Maybe on one hop?
You're 42.
I'm 42.
So I think you did a great job.
Yeah, the arms still work, huh?
I don't know what you're doing right
Wham.
now.
Doing the wham.
But while I will never, ever again homer inside a big league stadium, I do have some new glory stories to tell. There's the time I threw out the ceremonial first pitch inside the ballpark where I fell in love with baseball in the first place. And the time up in the broadcast booth, I got the chance to talk baseball sitting next to Orioles Hall of Famer Jim Palmer, who is also one of the greatest baseball broadcasters of all time. The actual voice in my head growing up as a baseball fan. And for once, his lineup card included me.
You always want to aim high when you throw out a first pitch.
Yeah.
So you did a nice job.
Seeing that angle from the top there, I realized that was not a strike. I have to say, a left-handed hitter would have taken that one in the side.
Maybe the best part of all, Palmer razzed me like an old teammate.
There we go. That's
what fly balls to center. You're happy about that?
I'm excited that was if you're a shortstop, that's not playable.
And for my wife Katie, who's heard all she can bear of the old story at Camden Yards, I have a brand new favorite.
From a classic sport to one of the fastest growing, and no, it is not pickleball. The sport of paddle is an international phenomenon, now picking up steam here in the U.S. Our Vladimir Dutier steps onto the court to see what all the racket's about.
It's called paddle. Not paddle tennis, not squash, not racquetball, paddle. It's played 2-on-2, and all serves are underhand. Players can use the turf court and glass walls to their advantage.
That's the shot of the day right there.
It's a great game to play socially.
One of paddle's most high-profile fans, 3-time Grand Slam champion Andy Murray. He's put his own money into the sport with an investment in a paddle company in the UK.
What's the appeal for you?
There's obviously a bit of crossover to tennis. It's probably a little bit easier, a bit more forgiving on the body, but still it's fun. It's competitive, it's good exercise. I believe it is a better game to play than pickleball, which I know everyone is trying just now.
What makes you think that people are willing to pay to play the sport when it's perhaps easy to just pick up a tennis racket or a pickleball racket and find a public court somewhere?
Where I trained in Spain, it was unbelievably popular. I think the same thing will happen in the UK as well. I don't see why it wouldn't.
I fell in love with paddle very recently, but I deeply fell in love with it.
Former tennis pro Jordana Lujan picked up paddle during the pandemic and quickly got drafted to the Pro Paddle League. It's North America's first professional circuit. Lujan was excited, but told us it's going to take more than a pro league for the sport to catch on here.
If paddle gets into universities, into college, I think that's what's gonna explode.
Right, because like I have a baby daughter. If I start to
have her enroll in tennis lessons when she's 5 or 6. She can play that straight up through college. She can learn paddle as a child, but when she gets to college, there's nothing to do.
No, and then right now, like, you will have to move to Spain or Argentina.
Just behind an old sugar factory at Brooklyn's Domino Park, players in the Big Apple are getting a taste of the sport. I wanted to try it for myself, so I stopped by the city's very first paddle club to ask its founder,
hey Vlad,
how you doing?
How are you?
Nice to meet you. The hard-hitting questions.
Really excited for this. Welcome to Paddle House.
These rackets actually end up costing more than tennis rackets.
So the price starts around $250 and they go up to $500. A tennis racket usually starts in $200 and ends in $300. You ready?
I'm ready.
One more.
One more. If you're a tennis player, you'd say, well, I've invested a lot of time in learning this particular sport. I really enjoy this sport. What would get me to turn my head and my attention to paddle?
Have you been ever frustrated of playing tennis in a court?
Yeah,
when you just thinking to yourself, you want to break your racket?
Frequently, yes.
Frequently. So that's the moment where you should transition to paddle. Ready?
Yeah. Famous last words. You said it was easy for people using the wall. This might be the hardest thing for me.
The ball comes, wait, hit off the wall, and over. Ready?
Eventually, I did get a handle on it.
It's a lot of fun.
But I don't think I'll be playing professional paddle anytime soon.
Very good. Perfect.
Ahead, how the legendary Stetson cowboy hat is made. That story is next. We close our show in Wild West style. The Stetson cowboy hat has been around for more than 150 years, and today pop culture influences have spread its popularity far and wide. Janet Shamlian gets a tutorial on how they're made, shaped, and worn.
This is the sound of success. Deep in the heart of Texas, 2 shifts working just about round the clock, turning out what's been called the American cowboy's defining piece of attire, a Stetson hat.
Production's absolutely crazy. We honestly cannot make enough hats.
The name is iconic, but recently, it's as if Stetson is fashion's brand new shiny toy. Call it the Yellowstone effect.
It ain't a damn suit bucket, try it on.
Yay! Even if most of the actors on the Western drama aren't wearing a Stetson branded hat.
The Yellowstone effect is real. We've never seen anything like it.
Tyler Thorson is Stetson's VP of marketing.
But honestly, the Yellowstone is just part of it. There's just a bigger shift that we feel going on in culture.
From Harry Styles to Beyonce, Western-inspired clothing is having a moment. That means the Stetson factory near Dallas is having one too.
What's happening?
Justin Thomason oversees production. It takes about 50 people, he says, to make each hat. From sewing the sweatband to crafting the crown.
So this is where the Stetson hats literally start to take their shape.
Some of the machines 50 years old, but still considered the gold standard of production.
We'll kind of put a rough shape to it. Put it inside the mold. We'll put the plug inside the mold. Now push the start. You just press the Stetson hat.
Love it.
You're a professional.
Hire me?
Absolutely, you're hired.
After a minute or so, this is the result.
Wow.
The company started in 1865 in Philadelphia, founded by John Stetson, who borrowed $60 from his sister to start the company. You could buy one for $8. The price of entry now is about $100. For top-of-the-line models, more than $1,000.
They're not cheap.
They're not cheap. There are affordable entry points into Stetson, but quality isn't cheap. The hats that you see in this factory are all made by hand, made in America, and you do pay a premium for that, but we also like to think it's worth it.
Who's worn a Stetson? Who hasn't? Actors John Wayne, Frank Sinatra, Steve McQueen, Presidents Truman, Eisenhower, and Obama. More recently, Post Malone and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
We're down now to our next and final contestant, Bud Davis.
Sales surged after John Travolta wore one in 1980's Urban Cowboy. But Stetson went bankrupt a few years later. Another company bought the license and now makes the hats.
We literally have not changed our process, have not changed our material, and haven't changed our machinery. Quite frankly, there's probably still some people that have made Stetson hats over 40 years ago that are still here.
But the hatter has evolved. There's an e-commerce site, and today's buyer is just as likely to be a woman.
Okay, see, there you go. So, like for this hat, just a little bit snug in the front and the back.
Okay.
But you don't want to have it tip way down.
The factory is turning out thousands a week. And with hundreds of styles, why not try on a dozen or so to find the fit that will rock a Western wardrobe?
I like it.
There's a lot of people that are wearing cowboy hats that may not have thought they could pull it off. They might go with the city hat, but this is the moment where... I love it. I think you look great.
For more stories like these and live coverage of breaking news 24/7, stream us right here on CBS News. I'm Michelle Miller. Thank you for watching Eye on America.